Grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let us unpack this absolute madness together. Everyone in town is currently breathing a massive sigh of relief because Jens is finally behind bars. The narrative we are being fed is that the nightmare is over, the villain is vanquished, and the good guys have finally secured a definitive victory. But if you ask me, we are all looking at this completely backward. Jens getting arrested was not a defeat. It was the opening move of a much darker, much more sophisticated chess game. We are so conditioned to view Pentonville as the absolute end of the line for criminals, but what if, for a man with his specific set of skills and resources, it is actually the ultimate sanctuary? I am looking at the screen and seeing a man who did not just get caught. I am seeing a man who allowed himself to be positioned exactly where he... Let us look at the current landscape of the town. Jens is locked up, and everyone from Sunny to Laura thinks they can finally sleep peacefully. But we need to think about who Jens really is at his core. This is not some low-level enforcer who got sloppy during a routine job. This is a master manipulator, a man with endless financial resources, deep underworld connections, and a psychological grip on his enemies that borders on terrifying. When a man like that seemingly accepts a long-term prison sentence without tearing the town apart on his way down, you have to ask yourself why. The answer, guys, is that he is building an empire right under our noses. He is turning Pentonville from a maximum security prison into his own personal fortress, a place where he can operate with absolute impunity while the rest of the world thinks he is permanently neutralized. This is where it gets incredibly interesting, and where a very specific, very dangerous piece of the puzzle comes into play. Jack. We all know Jack has a deeply complicated, shadowy history. He is a high-ranking intelligence operative with a past that is buried under layers of classified files and redacted documents. We know he has faced his own severe legal troubles, disappeared from the system entirely, and then magically reappeared with immense power within the intelligence community. But what if those buried secrets are not as secure as he confidently believed? What if Jens managed to get his hands on the one file, the one piece of undeniable evidence that could completely destroy Jack? I am talking about a bombshell so massive that it would not just end his career, but put him away for life or make him a permanent target for his own agency. Imagine the deeply toxic dynamic here. Jens does not need to threaten Jack with physical violence or send thugs to intimidate him. He just needs to slide a metaphorical folder across the table and make it clear that if he goes down, Jack goes down with him. Jack is a survivor, a man who prides himself on always being the smartest and most prepared person in the room. But in this specific scenario, he is completely outmaneuvered. He becomes a hostage to his own dark path. Jens would not ask for a pardon or a dramatic prison break. That would be far too obvious and would immediately put a massive target on his back. Instead, Jens would demand something far more insidious, the ability to become a ghost. He would force Jack to use his high-level security clearances and vast intelligence network to create deliberate blind spots in the Pentonville system. Let us really think about how this would work practically, because the logistics are terrifying. Jack has the authority and the technical reach to manipulate security footage, alter guard schedules, and forge official transfer documents without anyone batting an eye. Jens could theoretically walk right out of the prison gates in the dead of night, disguised or hidden in a secure transport vehicle, while the official state record shows him sleeping soundly in his heavily guarded cell. He could spend hours on the outside, executing his meticulous revenge plans, and be back in his bunk before the morning head count even begins. It is the absolute perfect alibi. If a crime happens in town, the police will look at the suspect list, see Jens on it, and immediately cross him off. They will say it is physically impossible because he is locked up. That concept of impossibility is exactly what Jens is banking on to execute his masterpiece. Think back to how many times we have seen characters desperately try to establish an alibi. They tamper with vehicle tracking systems, they have someone wear their distinctive clothes, they stage elaborate situations to fool the authorities. But having the state penitentiary officially vouch for your whereabouts, that is completely bulletproof. If you ask me, this transforms Jens from a standard, predictable villain into an unstoppable phantom. He can strike anywhere, at any time, and the authorities will be completely baffled by the lack of evidence. And every single time he does, Jack will be sitting in his pristine office, sweating, knowing exactly who pulled the trigger, but utterly paralyzed to stop. Jack would be forced to actively cover up the crimes to protect his own secret, making him an unwilling but essential accomplice to a reign of terror. So, who is sitting at the very top of this hypothetical hit list? If Jens is sneaking out of Pentonville to exact revenge, Sonny is undoubtedly public enemy number one. The history between these two is written in blood, betrayal, and endless power struggle. Sonny currently believes he has decisively won the war. He is openly celebrating the downfall of his enemy, totally unaware that the enemy is just gathering strength in the shadow. Sonny's immense hubris is his biggest vulnerability right now. He thinks Jens is a caged animal with broken teeth, but he does not realize the cage door is wide open and the animal is hunting. A strike against Sonny would not just be about eliminating a rival. It would be about sending a chilling, undeniable message to the entire underworld. Imagine the psychological toll on Sonny. Imagine Sonny being attacked in his own heavily fortified territory by a ghost with absolutely no trace of the assailant left behind. It would drive Sonny completely paranoid, tearing his loyal organization apart from the inside out as he desperately tries to find a mole or a traitor that simply does not exist. Sonny relies on knowing his enemies and seeing them coming from a mile away. But you cannot fight a shadow, and you certainly cannot intimidate a man who officially is not even there. Jens would systematically dismantle Sonny's life piece by piece, leaving Sonny grasping at thin air while the real culprit watches from the comfort of a prison cell. But Jens is far too smart and far too vindictive to just go after the local mob boss. He wants to hurt the very soul of the town, which brings us directly to Laura. Laura has been a steadfast, vocal opponent of everything Jens stands. She has immense political influence, moral power, and the unwavering love of the community. Attacking Laura isn't just a personal vendetta. It is a highly tactical strike against the stability and safety of the entire region. If Laura is targeted, the psychological impact on the citizens would be absolutely devastating. It would definitively prove that no one, not even the most protected and respected figures in the city, is safe from the dark. Furthermore, if Jens goes after Laura, it inevitably drags Kevin and even Ace into the dangerous crossfire. The collateral damage would be astronomical, and that is exactly the kind of widespread chaos a man like Jens actively thrives on. He wants the town to feel helpless. He wants them to look at their leaders and realize that their authority is nothing but an illusion. By targeting Laura, Jens elevates himself from a criminal to a domestic terrorist, using fear as his primary weapon while Jack is forced to sweep the ashes under the rug. Now, I have to pause here and play devil's advocate with my own theory for a second. Is it really plausible that Jack, a seasoned, ruthless intelligence director who has navigated the deadliest waters imaginable, would just roll over and let a convicted criminal hold his leash? Jack is a master of leverage himself. Would he not just find a quiet, efficient way to eliminate Jens inside the prison? He could easily send an assassin, disguised as an inmate, or arrange for a fatal accident in the cafeteria. It is a highly valid question to ask. Jack is not a victim by nature. He has taken down massive global threats before, and letting Jens live feels like a massive, uncharacteristic risk. We have seen Jack manipulate incredibly complex situations with cold, calculating precision. Surely, he would try to find the source of the blackmail and completely destroy it, rather than submit to being a glorified doorman for a psychopath. But here is exactly why I still firmly believe Jack is entirely trapped in this scenario. Jens is not stupid enough to keep the only copy of the damning evidence hidden under his mattress in his cell. He would absolutely have a dead man's switch established with trusted outside contact. If his heart stops beating, if he suffers an untimely accident, or even if he simply fails to check in with a proxy every 24 hours, those highly classified files get sent directly to the highest levels of the government, the oversight committees, and the international press. Jack simply cannot risk it. The stakes are far too high for a gamble. For all his immense power, Jack is a man who relies heavily on operating in the shadows. If his past sins are dragged into the blinding light, he loses his career, his freedom, and potentially his life. Jens has absolutely nothing to lose because he is already sitting in prison. That massive asymmetry of risk is exactly what makes Jens the master and Jack the servant in this twisted, inescapable dynamic. Jack is essentially a high-value hostage walking around in a very expensive suit. Moving further down the list of potential victims, we cannot ignore the law enforcement angle of this revenge plot. Jordan is a prime target for Jens's wrath. She was highly instrumental in the investigation that brought him down. She flatly rejected his manipulative offers, including that supposed medical clinic in Germany, and she steadfastly stood her ground against his intimidation. Jens possesses a massive, fragile ego, and being openly rejected and outsmarted by Jordan is a personal slight he will never forgive or forget. If he can utilize Jack to sneak out of Pentonville, targeting the former police commissioner sends a horrific, demoralizing message to the entire police department. It loudly declares that their badges and their laws cannot protect them. Jordan is incredibly smart, but she is trained to look for threats coming from the outside world, not from a man who is officially documented as being safely locked away under maximum state supervision. And then, of course, there is Justine. As the primary prosecutor, she is the literal face of his legal defeat. She stood in that courtroom, looked him in the eye, and put the final nails in his coffin. Jens punishing Justine would be the ultimate sickening subversion of the justice system. He would be using the very penitentiary system that convicted him as his foolproof alibi to murder the woman who prosecuted him. It is a terrifyingly poetic form of revenge that perfectly aligns with his twisted psychology. Justine is currently celebrating her victory with Sonny, genuinely thinking she has secured a massive win for her career and made the town safer. She has absolutely no idea that her success in the courtroom might have just painted a giant, glowing bullseye squarely on her own back. The sheer horror of this entire scenario is the total invisibility of the threat. Every single time a body drops, every time an explosion rocks the harbor, or a prominent citizen is attacked, the police will dutifully pull Jens's file. They will look at the timestamped security logs, see that he was in his cell eating terrible cafeteria food at the exact moment of the murder, and they will immediately move on to other suspects. They will start investigating innocent people. They will start suspecting each other. The paranoia will spread through the town like an aggressive virus. And all the while, Jack will be sitting alone in his office, watching the town burn to the ground, knowing with absolute certainty that he is the one who handed Jens the matches. The psychological toll on Jack alone would be fascinating to watch unfold. We would be witnessing a man of supreme control slowly being eaten alive by his own forced complicity and guilt. This is the kind of intricate, long-term storytelling that elevates a show from a simple daily drama to an absolute edge-of-your-seat thriller. We are looking at a scenario where the prison is no longer a punishment, it is a strategic headquarters. Jens is not a defeated, broken criminal. He is a kingpin operating from an impenetrable, state-funded castle. And Jack is not a powerful, untouchable ally to the authorities. He is the compromised man lowering the drawbridge in the dead of night to let the monster out. If you ask me, the real nightmare has not even begun yet. When the ghost of Pentonville officially starts his hunt, no one will see him coming, and no one will believe it is him, even when he is standing right in front of them with a weapon in his hand. The question is no longer if he will strike, but who will be the very first to fall when those heavy cell doors silently open in the dark. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, because this is a massive powder keg just waiting for a spark.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.